So, when I was 15, I had a massive, breathtaking, gut-wrenching crush on a guy in a class beside mine. One day during an argument, he turned around and called me ugly, arrogant, weird, and if that wasn't enough, he proceeded to tell me how there was absolutely nothing special or unique about me. That was the first time I cried in school. But that was also my first experience or my first introduction to my ordinary. And the only thing that got me through that heartbreak was a memory from 5th grade. You see, back then, my cousins and I, they'd either come visit or I'd go visit them. My aunt was quiet, funny, shy, and in the grand scheme of things in this world, very ordinary. I remember every time I plastered my hands with henna, she'd sit with me and tell me stories way into the night. It was my 5th grade summer when we first got the call. My aunt and her entire family had died in a car crash. For the first time, my world actually came crashing down on me. I couldn't and still can't ever put henna. But that incident and its impact on me was my first introduction to the extraordinary effect of ordinary people. And then I saw it everywhere. The brilliance, the humor, the compassion, and the happiness that ordinary people brought to ordinary situations, and in that made extraordinary memories. Who we are and how we see ourselves has become so tied up to what we do that the point between the self and the world has blurred to a point of non-existence, where every fiber of who you are is compared to and weighed by an 8.5 into 11-inch piece of paper, a resume, which barely fits 500 words. How do 500 words even begin to encompass who you are? So how has a paper replaced oneself? Well, in the era of 20-something CEOs, 8-year-old proteges, and teen inventors of yet another life-saving app, how do you distinguish between ordinary and extraordinary? Well, that depends on what it is about these individuals that make them extraordinary. An author and life coach, Mel Robbins, estimated that 1/3 of Americans are dissatisfied with their lives right now. That's 100 million people. The interesting fact, though, is that the odds of you being born, when you were born, to whom you were born, where you were born, and with everything this life can throw at you, are 1 in 400 trillion. Even your birth is nothing short of a miracle. Then why don't you see it? Well, for a lot of us, there are two selves. First, the Facebook or the LinkedIn self. The perfectionist, better than the rest of you, professional self. And the second is the mirror self. The lazy, pooping, sleeping, dog-loving, hopefully cat-hating self. Here, tonight, let's talk about the mirror self. Lazy, clingy, possessive, insecure. The real you, the ordinary you. Why? 2 reasons. 1, to be able to establish your extraordinary nature, we need to try to figure out who you are. And second, we need to establish what it means to be extraordinary. Well, that's awkward. See, ordinary people do that, we forget. Well, So, I asked my friends, asked about 30 people, some random, some friends, what it is about these 20-year-old CEOs and 8-year-old proteges that's so amazing about them. They thought about it, and they said, well, they're so amazing. I said, okay, why? And then they said, well, they have created multi-billion-dollar industries. They're so successful. Sounds legit, right? And in those 3 seconds, you've reduced a whole person, a thinking, feeling, doing being, to a basic monetary value. You just said you're amazing because you're successful, hence you're extraordinary. So if success equates extraordinary, what does it mean to be successful? To be rich, or to be intelligent, or to be powerful? Well, to be rich. How many of you know this guy? Okay. Nathan. His net worth today is 3.3 billion. He's just 33. But between you and me, he's virtually unheard of. So is he extraordinary? Then to be smart. What does it even mean to be smart? Even science does not have a definition. Is it an inherent ability to create and solve? Or is it a learned skill to recreate and discover? Bill Gates is smart, no doubt. He had been programming since his high school in the late 1960s, when there were less than 3,000 computers in the entirety of the United States. And if Malcolm Gladwell's 10,000 rule has any bearing, he was already a master of programming by the time the masses even knew what a computer was. But sheer intelligence didn't make him successful or extraordinary. Capitalizing and monopolizing on a growing industry, and then capitalizing on a learned skill is what led to his success. And then, to be powerful. Well, politicians are powerful. But if history and current affairs have taught us anything, extraordinary is not an adjective I use for them. Then what is it? What makes something extraordinary? Extraordinary is perception. The idea that somebody has done something that we can't, we haven't done before. The perception that somebody is better than us. The perception that somebody did something amazing. The perception. Perception is what makes something, anything, extraordinary. In 1989, a huge, hideous metal structure was erected in the city. It was so hideous that the town council wanted to tear it down. It was criticized for its design, its construction, but ultimately they used it for radio transmission due to its height. It was when the structure was actually shown in a movie that the general population began changing its view about it. Today, that once hideous structure is the most visited paid tourist structure in the world. Oh, and it's called the Eiffel Tower. I don't know if you've heard of it. Now, let's come back to you. Have you ever looked in a mirror and said, you know what? You ain't half bad. Actually, you're pretty okay. Have you ever thought that, whew, I needed it. I got through high school. I sat through a 300-person lecture and held my own. I get lost a few times, but I'm finding my way back. Have you ever marveled at the idea that no matter what the day looks like, you get out of bed, that you show up, that every day you overcome yet another disappointment, another heartbreak, another obstacle, that every day in a world so obsessed with perfection, you still walk with your head held high, and that every day in a world so confused and frazzled, you manage to make your way. No, you probably haven't even thought of yourself as above average, let alone extraordinary. We live in a world that is so enthralled by this idea of an abstract, extraordinary brilliance that we forget to look at ourselves and realize that we're pretty amazing too. You are extraordinary because you are the protagonist of your story. Just because someone else hasn't heard of it doesn't make it less extraordinary. Have any of you ever met somebody who's never heard of your favorite band or your favorite author? I bet you have. Does that mean that your favorite author isn't good enough? Well, there are easily 50,000 well-loved and celebrated authors in the entirety of the United States. You know 5, maybe 10. But does that mean that the other 49,990 authors aren't good enough? Well, it just means you never got to their amazing, ordinary stories. Now, how does one continue to be ordinary. Well, you gotta do you, every day. Why? Because ordinary people change lives. Ordinary doctors, ordinary clinicians, ordinary parents, ordinary friends, ordinary individuals make up this auditorium. Ordinary students, like you and me, write the books, invent the inventions, make the discoveries that will tomorrow change the world. Maybe not everybody's world, but somebody's world. So, go forth, be ordinary, be you, always. Thank you.